How you doing, everybody? It's George Casimos from StopFemaNow. I have Sheri on the other screen over there, and I have Gerry Baldachino from Penn, Development over here. Everybody say hi.
Hi, y'all.
Hey.
How you doing? So today we're going to talk about REM. Let me get Gerry more in there than me. Today we're going to talk about REM more than anything, and questions, concerns, and everything else. So we have Gerry here again, and Gerry's right there, and we have Sheri on the other split screen. And basically, everybody's going to be able to ask your questions if you have any questions. But first, obviously, we know Gerry's what Gerry knows about REM. He's done about 100 house raises. And
REM, yeah. Well, and B and C, probably a little more than 100, but yeah.
Oh, all right. So you've done 100 REM homes, and
we've done Pathway B and Pathway C. We've done majority, 75% of them were home lifts, and about 25% were new.
Okay.
So we know the program well.
And you haven't had any callbacks. I think we got.
No, we actually have not.
Right. And I think one of the reasons is because you have because you work very closely with Sheri. So Sheri, when I've known about you for years. You're one of the REM experts that I've always come to when I had questions when you were still with Ocean County Long-Term Recovery Group.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know where you went. You were like missing it. I couldn't find you, and I had a few questions. So I'm glad we tracked you down with Gerry, and I want to thank Gerry from Penn Development for reaching out and having you here today.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to go over just some of the experience. Tell me a little bit about what you did for REM and a little bit about Sheri Khan.
Okay, well, let's see. I'm going to focus on REM.
Yes.
So I was hired when HGI was the original contractor with the state for program policy procedure and the development of program policy and procedure.
Right.
It was the operations division of the REM program, and the REM contractors, 3 at the time, were hired by the state to handle the construction aspects of the project or the program. So
wait, Sheri, you helped set up the REM program? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I was part of that first process.
Okay, right in the beginning when REM came out. So you worked for HGI, which was one of the original contractors, correct?
Yeah.
And then at some point you worked for the DCA?
Then when HGI's contract, well, actually, they were kind of fired from the position. DCA, I worked out of operations in Newark with policy procedures and things like that out of Newark.
Right.
And then Newark, as I should say, and then was moved to Trenton.
Right. All right. So you've been with the REM program from day one, and you've been just about, and you deal with a little bit with Build It Back in New York City. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So you have a little bit of experience on the federal level also, and also you're a professor, and also correct me if I'm wrong. You work for Ocean County Long-Term Recovery Group and help do their REM.
Yes, right. I helped them to be able to disperse unmet needs money appropriately so there would not be clawbacks, and
Right.
help educate the unmet need community that had everyone's best interest at heart to be able to follow through with their missions.
Right. Okay. So now correct me if I'm wrong. Tell me a little bit about tell me what retainage is. Let's start with, the problems with REM. And a lot of it isn't with the people who work with REM. A lot of it is the procedures and everything else, right?
Right. For sure. Ever since day one, when I got on the job with people in operations, people at DCA, the boots on the ground, the housing advisors, the project managers, all the people who, senior management, everyone was very dedicated to making sure that people were okay.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about why are people getting clawed back? That's like the biggest issue.
Well, so it's federal money, right? It's our money. It's our tax money collectively that is used in these disaster recovery programs. And so the federal government wants to make sure that the money is being spent appropriately. That's all. It's like if we gave money to somebody to help them do something,
Right.
and if they actually didn't use the money appropriately, we'd say, hey, give me my money back.
Right.
So the clawbacks in and of themselves theoretically are designed to make sure that money is spent appropriately, and if it's not spent appropriately, it's given back. The issues, though, the problems are where they come up is that if you don't understand what the project is, how do you understand how to use the money appropriately? Okay, that's the number one thing. And of course, the scope of work, the ECR, is the job, is the RREM project that's the money's based off of. So if you don't actually know what that is, then and you don't share that with a builder, then how does the builder know what the job is? There's communication between the homeowner and the builder. I mean, it has to be, and the builder cannot be your enemy. Your builder has to work collaboratively with you, and so to make sure that scope of work is gone line item by line item to make sure that everyone understands how to spend the money appropriately.
So if your contractor does not know what an ECR is, then we have a problem.
Oh, and if the homeowner doesn't know what the ECR, because in the very beginning, people weren't given their scopes of work. And so if you don't have your scope of work to know what the heck your project is, then, from the get-go, the builder's going to look at the grant award and assume that the grant award is free money to be used to build back your project without any it's arbitrary. It's whatever you and the builder decide you need. And that's the case.
So that's one.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, tell me about the retainage.
Okay. So the retainage is, it's a check and balance. That's what it's designed for. It's designed to make sure that people who have the RREM money actually get back in their home with their CO so that the money is being spent appropriately once again. So, and it's supposed to say, builder, you need to make sure this home is completed before this last bit of money. It's like holding back, in all contracts. Jerry, you understand. Whenever you have a contract with your builder or with somebody, you don't throw all the money up front to them and just go, oh, I trust you explicitly. You say, I'm going to earn your respect. I'm going to earn your money because this is what I do. I'm a professional. And so I'm going to get this money, and then as we go through the project, then there are other payments that are due, tied to the work that's being done. And retainage is the same way. It's just the last payment.
Yeah, exactly. And most of our clients, we go through their E1 diligently with them. Sheri's there, myself, and we basically, I guess the word is, decode their whole grant award and how they're going to get their money and when it's going to be released, so we can appropriate the job in accordance to how they're going to get the money. Therefore, pretty much all our jobs go pretty smooth in Pathway B because the people aren't under the stress of not being paid by RREM.
So here's where I think you're getting with the retainage is. Every contractor has to understand that for every job, there's going to be a certain amount of money. I'm going to say between $15,000 and $30,000. I'm just throwing a number out in the air that a contractor has to compensate for. Is that correct?
More than that at times. So at the very end of the job, if somebody is getting ICC money, usually that's $15,000. And if they had the full grant award, which is the only case they'd be able to get the ICC and keep it,
yeah.
They have that unmet need, then the builder might have to wait for $30,000.
So what I'm getting at though is, if a contractor has 30 jobs and they're retained at $30,000 each, that's $900,000 that contract better have sitting in the back to fund these jobs, or otherwise you can't get a CO. I think there's some good contractors out there that unfortunately are going under these fraudulent contractor lists because they don't know how to manage money. And, some of them are just fraudulent, but there's a lot of them that are just bad business. They're good contractors. They can build a house, but they can't fund 30 houses. And I think that's one of the problems. Gerry, what do you think? What do you think about that? Sorry about that.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, that is absolutely true. Once once it starts to fall, it just becomes an avalanche. And if a contractor has too many jobs, he's has to start some, has to finish some. He's got no funds coming in, and a lot of times, like Sheri was saying, it does become more than even the 15 or 30 because the last payment before the retainage isn't even gotten to the homeowner because either it was filed wrong, wasn't invoiced correctly to the program, and that delay could be 2, sometimes 3 months. Now that either the contractor decides to stop the job, which infuriates the homeowner,
Right.
obviously, and or he continues it, but he gets deeper and deeper in the hole.
Right. Or the contractor stops the job waiting for money from somebody and he can't move over. Now, I just want to stop here for 1 second. You have a bond, right, from RREM?
Yeah.
How much is that bond?
About $7.5 million.
So you're not walking away from $150,000 house,
No,
right? Because you're on the hook for a $7.5 million bond, right?
Absolutely.
So you're not moving on it. Sheri, tell me a little bit more about the unmet needs. Tell me a little bit about what that means and what are the ramifications for people.
Okay, so the first thing I want to say is unmet need on a grant award calculation has no bearing on unmet need in real money for a job. They're two separate numbers with the same name. So if you have a grant award and you have an unmet need of $30,000, that means that any funding from additional funding that comes in up to $30,000 is okay. You won't lose your grant. That is completely separate from what's the job that you're doing, what's the contract amount, and if you need extra money to meet that contract. Am I making any sense?
I think you are. So for instance, we all know SBA is a duplication of benefits. Is that correct?
Yes.
So if I have a $30,000 unmet need, would that kind of not be a duplication of benefits at that point?
It would be a duplication of benefits in every case, but it may not be a duplication of benefits that adversely affects the grant.
Okay.
And you won't lose your grant. So if your unmet need is $30,000 and you received a $30,000 SBA and all other things being equal, and I mean that because we're in the weeds. This is even if those numbers are right, you've used the 150 and you used the 30, and so on paper you look fine on the grant award calculation. It doesn't mean that at the very end, at the final inspection, that if you have not done the work on the ECR, and let's say you didn't need an air conditioner, so you didn't do an air conditioner. Then that $8,000 roughly, depending on what kind of air conditioning unit you had, that's going to come off. That's going to come off that amount. So, and then you're going to lose, or they're going to ask you back for $8,000, or if they've already dispersed the money and you've already received the $30,000 from SBA.
Okay, so what is a contingency?
Okay, so that's a whole other ball of beeswax. So retainage, let me back up. So retainage is there to protect you, protect the homeowner, to make sure all the work gets done. It is a sticky wicket because that means that the builder has to outlay that money first. And the builder's going to have to outlay money throughout the process.
Right.
If RREM says, you show me the work, then I pay. So the retainage is every single builder has to complete the work first, and then you get that money, but you should get that money. But you might not get the money because if you didn't do everything on the scope of work, then they will deduct that from that retainage. And so you might supposedly get $15,000, but you may only get $5,000, you may not get any, you may get it all. Who knows?
Okay. So,
now,
go ahead.
Okay, contingency is a whole other thing. So for the first group of applicants who came through up till October 14, 2014, everyone had a contingency in their grant.
Right.
And what that was the original scopes of work, and even going forward in the whole program. But the original scopes of work were very rudimentary. They didn't really, remember, Gerry, they didn't have unit pricing set up. And
Right.
so it was arbitrary. And, one of the big construction management companies was taking out costs of foundation in the scope of work. And I mean, it was a real sticky wicket because people were trying to figure out what to do with this. How, to figure it out. People at the top, at the DCA and the construction managers. Well, so what they did in anticipation that they know that there could be errors, not on purpose errors. I really want to make that super clear. There's nobody up at the top echelons going, I want to mess around with all this.
Right, right.
They really didn't know what, they tried to do with good faith, and they said, we're going to put contingency. So extra money, we're going to anticipate there's going to be, I think the contingency was 15%. I have to double check on the exhibit one. I haven't seen a contingency exhibit one in a while, but they put in a percentage of the total development cost. So the total development cost to REM was the big picture. Okay. So REM looked at the WIP, the work in place.
Right.
That number plus what it would cost to, they didn't even have demo in this yet. So what it would, if you had to get a new house. So what it would cost to, what you put in to
Right.
put the house back together so far, what it would cost to elevate the house,
Right.
what it would cost to repair the house. They added those three numbers together, and then they added a percentage that was like, well, who knows what the heck we're going to find here. So unforeseen costs.
For lack of a better word, right. Extras, right?
Things that they didn't know because they knew they weren't working with a perfect document with the scope. So, and of course they're not. No one's working with a perfect document. And until you get engineering, you don't know what your job is. Until you get a builder there and an engineer out there giving you plans, you don't know what the cost of your job is going to be.
So Sheri, tell me how you and Gerry collaborate. Gerry gets a job, and what do you guys do different than a regular contractor that does 3 houses and happens to do a REM home? Like, what do how does it break down? I mean, you want to start, Gerry? Like, you get somebody that says, I want to raise my home. And then you get Sheri and say, Sheri, yes, make this into numbers I understand, right?
Yeah, well, yes, in some form, it's actually it's a little different than that. But here's what happens. Basically, what I do is we'll take the homeowner. I'll go through their ACR specifically, and
right.
Let's just simply make this case what we're going to talk about now, a turnkey, where I'm doing the whole project in its entirety. Basically, I'll just check off each item that REM is giving them money for, number one. So I'm pricing exactly what the ECR says. They may say, hey, we don't need an air conditioner, but I'm still putting it in my estimate because we have to find somewhere to either have a grant increase so they don't get that clawed back. So we try to do this ahead of time and have a game plan for the job before we actually start it. But where Sheri comes in is, if the person does a contract with me and they do sign, Sheri comes in and we take their Exhibit 1, their grant award, and we set up the payment schedules based upon how their money's coming from them. How much did they get for their initial deposit? How much do they have a contingency?
Right.
Do they have a retainer?
How much is the homeowner going to need above and beyond REM?
Exactly.
Is
exactly. And we try to, figure out, can they get it? Can they do it? And that's an enlightenment point for everybody. At that time, the homeowner will say, yep, looks like I got to come out of pocket with $5,000. Okay.
And so there's no surprises at the end.
Correct.
So Sheri, you've been doing this. I mean, how many homes have you done this for between Gerry and Ocean County Storm Recovery Group? I mean, have you done it for 50, 100, 200 homes? I mean,
probably more. So with OCLTRG and the unmet needs table, I think we worked with about 400 REM applicants, and with Gerry and I don't know how many we did, but we've done quite a few together. I mean, I haven't kept count of them, but You know, it's that.
For how many years now? Sure, about 2 years we've been doing that, right?
Yeah. Right. And it's just
when we started that process of that. It had to be about 2 years ago.
Right. So that's why I call Sheri the expert, because whenever I had questions, obviously I would talk to the folks at RREM directly, and we've actually had them at our meetings, and they're great. But there's just so much and so many questions. Yeah. But what I'm getting at, though, is if you're raising a home, or you're thinking about raising a home or whatever, one of the people, you should get a couple estimates, but one of them you should talk to Gerry, because you're going to have Gerry, but then you're going to have Sheri also, just looking at everything. So there's no clawbacks at the end. Here's the way I understand it, and I'm pretty simplified in doing it, is if you got paid from RREM $10,000 for your heating and air conditioning system and $10,000 for your stairs, and your contractor did a great job and did your stairs for $5,000. Okay, and he did the HVAC and it cost $15,000. At the end of the day, they collectively cost $20,000. Okay, but RREM is going to say, well, you only got charged $5,000 for the stairs, so we're going to claw back $5,000. So now your grant is no longer $150. Am I correct in saying that?
Not necessarily. No. What it comes down to is that collectively they equal 20, but as long as they're both done,
right,
they give them credit for it. They have to have the items on the scope done. So
no, they have to be done, but
so they wouldn't claw back the 5 for the stairs because it was less than the 10.
Well, let me, Gerry.
See, you know what it's billed for because you look at the ECR. You're billing it for 10, right?
But let me interject here. So, Gerry, you do Kenny and the team at your company, they put together the invoicing and the payment process. You know, you're experts at that. Not everybody's an expert like that. As a matter of fact, most of the builders are don't know what the heck they're doing with it, and it's not that they don't have to. I mean that it's a moral failing. Okay, it's just that to George's point, there are a lot of people who go up there and they say they line item every single thing on their invoice to RREM, on their payment request form to RREM. They literally line item it. And if you line item it, okay, let's say you're putting together stairs, Gerry. Mm-hmm. And what did you say, air conditioning unit?
Yes.
Okay. So let's just say that you're putting together, what you said, 10,000 each?
Yes.
So let's just say that you're putting together stairs and the stairs cost $5,000.
They bill RREM $5,000.
They bill RREM $5,000 for the stairs. That's what they're doing. If they bill it itemized like that,
right.
RREM is going to take it back. If they bill it like that. But
let me just say one thing. I apologize for my comment. George, you were right. When you say bill RREM, if you bill RREM incorrectly, it will get clawed back. Right. In my contract,
your contracts are brilliant.
The homeowner itself, when they do a final inspection, if they're in place, they get credit for it. That's I misinterpreted.
Yeah, Okay. So what I'm getting at though is your contractor better know how to bill RREM, okay? Because if they don't bill them correctly, even though they did the stairs cheaper, it's going to cost you at the end.
That's right. Plus, you have to take into consideration that let's just say they were able to cut the cost of the stairs without cutting the quality or anything. But when they go to the AC or the heating unit, and you've got these, heating units that have, 8 water lines into them and crazy, complicated systems, then $10,000 may not be enough to cover the cost of taking care of this system, because when you're taking the house apart and you have to drain everything and you have to winterize it and you have to go through a million things and then put it all back together again, that may end up costing $12,000 or $13,000, and RREM's not going to give you the added money for that. So you have to create an invoice that is a true representation of legitimate costs in the job. And you're not trying to mess up with REM or anything, but it's...
Well, it's and I'm sorry to interject here. So basically, what I'm getting at is you got to know how to bill REM. Nobody's trying to do anything wrong, but if you build it, it's like doing your taxes. You know, I'm not going to do my taxes. I'm going to pay somebody to do my taxes because that's the way the IRS wants to see it. Otherwise, you're going to get audited every year. You're going to have problems. And I think that's the same with the REM program. Is that correct?
It is true with the REM program, and your builder has to keep those records too.
So, right. So here's my next question. If you get somebody, okay, for my home, for instance, and REM comes in and says, you know, you got to raise your home, put it 8 block, you know, 8 course a block, raise it, put it back down, you know, and the regular thing. And then you find out, you do a soil test, and then you need helicals. So what do you do at that point?
Well, you do a scope adjustment at that point.
Okay, so you get a bigger grant award if you can, right?
If possible.
If possible, okay.
They at least get a bigger unmet need if it's approved.
Right.
Which enables them to maybe take an SBA loan without any recourse, or maybe get a charity group to chip in without it being duplication benefits. And there's, you know, it definitely helps them to at least get a higher unmet need.
Right.
In case they were already capped at, if they were already maxed out at 150, you then get a scope adjustment and it'll go toward a higher unmet need.
Right. And what is, how does an unmet need a good thing, right? An unmet need is a good thing?
Excellent.
Yeah. Well, tell me why it's an excellent thing.
Well, it gives you a lot of flexibility. You had, you know, a helical job. Okay, so let's say the ECR was filled with all kinds of stuff. You know, new kitchen cabinets, new flooring, new windows, new doors, right? And you have $150,000, and there's lead in the house and asbestos. And now you have helicals. Well, if you have a gigantic unmet need, then you can get rid of, you focus on the things that are going to make you in compliance with REM and HUD and city, in municipality, and safe, a safe sanitary home, which is really the mission of HUD.
Right.
You know, so HUD says, you have to do lead, you have to do asbestos, because that is, if we're going to give you federal money, we want to make sure that you're safe and secure.
So what does that contingency do? Why is it a good thing?
Well, that's not a continuous unmet need.
I'm sorry, the unmet need.
High unmet, because then if you have to put in cabinets and flooring and you really don't need that, then you can remove all that nonsense out of the grant, or, you know, out of the ECR, but the unmet need absorbs those things that are going to be reduced, taken out of, when they do the final inspection, they're going to take that money that's associated with those items.
Right.
Off of they're going to deduct. Okay. But if you have a high unmet need and you have an unmet need of $50,000 and you have a big job and you're able to eliminate $50,000 worth of nonsense, you still have your grant. You still don't have to worry about clawbacks, and you still have the money to pay for the real important stuff.
So what happens? I know some people from like August of last year, they get an extra $15,000 for permits.
That was October. That was kind of in October as well. When contingency was gone, they added in the additional 15 for design services.
So are the people after? What was the deadline date?
For what, design services? I don't remember, Sheri.
The deadline date? What do you mean? When it started?
Yeah, like August last year or something?
No. That was like around October 2014.
Okay, so if you got a REM grant after October 2014, you're almost effectively getting a $165,000 grant.
Well,
if you can.
Well, you get your construction grant is $150, but now you have additional monies over and above the grant to pay for your design services,
up
your
to
engineering.
Up to $165.
No,
well, up to $15,000.
Up to $15,000. That's again if it's billed correctly in the REM. So now what happens with these fraudulent contractors that are, you know, they stop midstream, they ran with the money. So what happens when people like Gerry come in and mop it up? Like how do you do the numbers? That's got to be on top of all the REM stuff and on top of all the contractor stuff. Now you have this other contractor that did a lot of work. So how does that all get done? Is that another like big calculation? How does that work?
It's another layer, right, Gerry?
Yeah, it's kind of a whole, it's absolutely go back, start from scratch, figure out, again, back to their E1. If they haven't got any fraud money yet and they want to move forward, then we kind of sit down with them. Okay, how much has REM gotten? Let's see what you were supposed to get on this payment. And we try to make it work that way. I mean, it's almost, it's a puzzle, Sheri. I mean, that's really how to describe it, right? We have to really put together a puzzle in a lot of cases to try to make the funds work for the homeowner to actually get the job done.
Right.
And
so when you pick up one of these, we'll call them rescue projects, like a Shore House Lifters or J&N.
Yeah.
Like Shore House Lifters, you've done a few, and the slabs have been poured incorrectly, and they got to get ripped out. They were
being checked. Well, they have to. Core samples need to be done because Tom's River felt that their work was inadequate. So a job that was taken over from Shore,
right?
The inspector was like, "Hey, I can't accept that. You guys."
So any job you do with Shore now, you do a core sample
of the footing to see if it was even proper.
And why I'm getting to that is one of two things is going to happen because you have experience with that. Is if somebody else does it, they're either going to pick it up at the end, and it's going to be an extra. It's going to be a big surprise that hey, I need another $20,000 because we got to pour your foundation. Give me $20,000. Or number two, you're going to have a cracked foundation because it was poured incorrectly. So you got to know, right?
And especially if the house is back down on a foundation, they never did it, and then the inspector says, "Oops, you guys got to do that," and then it fails. And then you got to pick the house back up, take out the footing.
So it's more than just a penny. Yeah. So now
So you got to really be on top of what you're doing and be ahead of all that stuff. So you can't let somebody get in that position. Is really the bottom line. You don't want to take someone too far. When you're doing a rescue job, you want to make sure that the municipality is aware of the job and ask them what they want to see.
Right. Well, see, here's one of the things I'm getting at. I don't want people to get stuck. We've heard 1,000 different stories. And think about this for 1 second. The one guy ran, let's say Shore House Lifters ran. You use somebody who's good, somebody you know who's good and everything, and they do the right thing. They go, hey, look, everything's there. I'm just going to finish up. It's about $30,000, $40,000 worth of work. I'm done. We're done. But they don't have the experience, Gerry's experience, and they basically go, Tom's River or some township comes and says, they're doing it for you. Your foundation's no good. It's going to crack. Your house is going to settle this and that. Now we got to lift it, another $20,000, $30,000. Now we got to remove it. So you're adding cost upon the cost that you still have to do. When initially, if you had Gerry for Shore House Lifter home, you would know that Gerry would go, right now you need a ballpark foundation.
Yeah, so
$20,000, $15,000. Instead of needing lift the house up, we're not going to drop it. We're going to leave it up there. Let's get the foundation. You know what I'm just saying? You don't have to go over and over and fix the same problem for a different house.
Try to streamline it as best we can. And there's some legwork to that. And usually we try to take care of the legwork when we meet the customer and listen to the story, check the situation out from 3 different ways, which is the engineering, the actual work, and their REM situation. So we really look at it from all ways before we do anything, because if you get one of those wrong, you're right. There'll be cost upon cost, not to mention time delays.
Right. So. And so what have you heard, Sheri? What have you heard about, all these contractors that walked away and they're in REM, and what's happening?
I haven't really heard much lately, but it's not rocket science, really to foreshadow what was going to happen. Look, it comes really kind of simple. First of all, you're going to have contractors coming into storms from outside of the region, because that's what they do, and Jersey has, every municipality has its own, codes and everything. And if you're not from the area, you really don't understand it. So there's a certain portion of these contractors who were not going to be successful over the long haul simply because they didn't understand how business was done. Okay, so let's put them aside. You have some who really came in with the direct desire of, I'm just going to get, and they did. They came in and said, give me your money, and then they ran. And those are scum. Those are bad guys. They're everywhere. Now you have good guys along the shore, and what they didn't know was that they had to float the job. they have to float the job, and that the job, the homeowner, how you invoice the program is going to determine how much money you're going to get out of the program appropriately, and you have to know where is the money coming from before you start the job. And Gerry,
so you have to do a couple things. You have to float the job for $30,000 or $50,000. Number one.
To some degree, you have to float the job.
Okay, number one, let's just say 30 or 50. Number two, you better know how to do the paperwork, because you don't want to give the homeowner a surprise and say, by the way, I need another $20,000 for the extras. And by the way, I made a mistake on the paperwork. You're going to get clawed back another $20,000. So then you have a $40,000 surprise at the end. And that's really what we want to get away from. Make sure you have somebody like Sheri and Gerry, who kind of know. If you know, whoever's working on your house, make sure they speak RREM. It's a really big. In my opinion, I wasn't scared of the house lift or down or doing any of that work. It was really RREM and getting the paperwork done with RREM. That was always been a concern, because it just felt like it always changed and there was always something different, and it wasn't anybody maliciously doing it. It's a new program and it's got federal regulations, and that Stafford Act is
a big deal. Yes. And it's like our money. Remember, it's our tax money that's being used to help people. And so just as if we were using our money to give it to people, we want to make sure that the money is used appropriately. It's not, somebody trying to hurt another person. But I really want to say that, one of the reasons why I've done construction for about 35 years, and I flipped houses before it was cool and groovy on HGTV. One of the reasons why I found myself attracted to what Gerry was doing was a couple of reasons. One, he really knows what he's talking about. I mean, and if you're in the business, you know a pro when you meet a pro, so that's the easy, you're on the same level of conversation. The other thing that's really important is that Gerry has a team. It's a business. It's a real business. A team of people who are really looking out after you. And the majority of people, you can watch HGTV until the cows come home and you think that everything's happening in 3 days. They don't realize that it's 8 months in the making. If you watch when they go into Home Depot, it's summertime. And then when you see when they're doing the kitchen, it's wintertime. Right. They don't really pay attention to everything in the background that's going on.
Stay away from a guy with a magnet on his truck. That's what
some guys are okay, but the thing is that, it's very important, if you have a big team, you're not going to be the least expensive person on the block. But what you are going to do is, if one member of your team is in charge of making sure that all the money is properly accounted for, and that the program is invoiced right, and that you're part of every process, and that every time you make a payment, it's tied to an action item. It's tied to something that the contractor has done that you can see, that can be billed. That's super important. It's not, you are intimately part of this. It's a collaborative thing. And right. And that the job is getting done on time,
it'll be on time. Don't you have an express build a little bit?
Yeah, well, we've done a lot of houses in 90-day time frames, 120-day time frames, and we have an express build for a brand new house, which is 100 days. Which it's like I say, it's not a huge house, but it's about 1,000 square feet.
Yeah. So but he's saying he can get it done in
100 days from shovel to finish.
100 days.
After permitting.
After you get permitting, but you have a pretty good grasp on all the permitting and all the things, right? You have a guy.
We have a guy in the office with that
dedicated to permitting.
Okay. And the RREM invoicing. So we kind of have a system that really works in our company. And Sheri, she was there and she knows, and she's a great part of it too. So
I think what you're trying to get at, Sheri, I'm sorry, Gerry, is that you're not going to get any surprises at the end of the job with Gerry.
No, not at all. Well, when you get when you guys agree on the cost of the job, then that's the cost of the job. And unless something absolutely crazy happens, and I mean huge crazy, like you get underneath they get into the house and everything's rotted. Everything's just, it's really in worse shape, which, it's really hard to happen because the engineer catches that usually up front. But I mean, then you're brought in. It's not just like, hey, here's a change order. You're literally brought in and you get a phone call and you see it. You see what's going on. Then there's a conversation. How do we address this? What do we do? How do we make it work?
Yeah. So look, I just want to, I don't even want to, we have so much we can still stay on and talk about. If we have folks that want to have more questions, and would you guys be willing to come back and answer a few questions for everybody, if you don't mind?
Sure, of course.
If you don't mind, I appreciate it. And I want to thank Sheri Khan, long time. I'm glad I got to see you at least on.
Me too.
When you come up, we'll have a drink if you don't mind. And if you don't mind, I'm going to call you our REM expert. You're the REM expert.
It's you guys.
And I appreciate you having the time to answer a lot of the questions. And Gerry, again, as always, from Penn, Jersey, I appreciate it. And thank you again. And thank you again, and we'll talk soon, all right?
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, you too now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.